Optional classes that comes as a feature as a part of Java 8 JDK 1.8. So it is a class called optional. It is available in java.util package. Optional object is called as container object. Optional class object of optional class is going to called as container object. It is available in java.util package. So optional object is called as container object. It may or may not contain null values. So there is a class called string in which you can store the null values as well as not null value. So this is also the same, in which you can contain not null values and null values both in this container object. What is container object? The object of optional class is going to be called as container object. Purpose of optional class is to provide type level solution to present optional class value instead of optional value instead of null references. So when in case of a string, if you didn't provided the values, by default the values are going to be null. But the optional class provided the facility to provide the optional value. If you don't provide, you can set the optional value. Suppose your name is Rahul and you didn't provided your name, then by default you can set the values. When anyone is not going to provide the values, the name value is user is going to provide the values, then the values is going to be of username. If user is not going to provide the value, then we are going to provide some optional values to that username. I think you got the idea. Optional class is basically implemented on the basis of singleton design pattern, mean we cannot create the instance of optional class directly. To make the instance, we have certain methods that are empty of optionalable method. So by using these three methods, we can get the instance of optional class. Of course, these methods are static method. And of course, there are other methods like get, is present, or else. We will go through these methods when we are going to do our code. So here is the code. Let's do this code. So here you can see we are trying to create the instance normally with the constructor of optional class, but optional class is implemented basis on the singleton design pattern, so it is not happening. We have to use the method empty. Remember empty to get the instance of optional class of optionalable. So we are using empty in this case. Let's do this code. Project. Optional class project in which we are going to do our first code. Let's make a package com.jtc. Let's say this lab1. Close other things. Let's say we are doing it in main method. So with optional class, we have to import optional class from java.util package. Java.util, from java.util optional class is coming. Let's say op1 new optional. This is not going to happen because optional class is written on the basis of singleton design pattern. So empty. Let's print this P1. So see here, optional.empty is coming in this reference variable or of optional class. Optional.empty is coming. So empty object is getting created. Optional class is a container object that here we are not providing any references. We are not providing any values. When we want to create empty object, then we are going to use empty method of optional class. Let's print op1 dot what is going to be hash code. Hash code is 0. There is no hash code for this. op1 dot toString, anything got printed. Optional dot empty is getting printed. Let's say op1 dot is present. Is anything present? This is the method of optional class which is returning boolean. So b false, nothing is present. What else method? We have get method. So op1 dot get, it returns the value that is going to be inside this optional object, but here this optional object itself is the empty object. Let's print obj. Let's see what is coming. It is going to give error, maybe null pointer error. No such element exception. What get method do? Press Ctrl, click on get method. Get method return the value t. So here the object inside this reference variable is itself empty. Then we are trying to get anything from that empty object. No such element exception. So comment it. Another method is or else method, in which we can provide certain values. Which is going to return? What or else is returning? Type t. Whatever value we are going to give means string or object. Let's see what will happen. I restart. Rahul. So with this empty object right here, we are using this method and we are providing optional values. The purpose of optional class is to provide optional values when we have empty references. To show empty references, instead of showing empty references, we can do, we can show optional values. So here we are showing optional values. Is this thing mean that inside this optional empty object the Rahul got inserted? this value got inserted? No. Here you can see we are printing this optional empty object, so it is empty. Now with or else method we are providing optional values. So optional values we got here, but again when we are printing this optional empty object, then then that object is empty, mean we are only providing optional values. We are not providing values, we are not altering that optional object. We are not altering that optional object, we are not providing on that optional object, we are not providing these values on that optional object. We are not doing that. We are only, when this is empty, then we are providing optional values. Here you can see it is empty. So when it is empty, we are providing optional values. With or else, we are not changing the instance of optional class object right here. We are just providing optional values, Rahul, and then when we are again trying to print this optional object, then again we are getting empty object. So this is what? This is this method, empty method. We have other method, which is off method. Let's see off method. Here, close orders. We are not going with empty. We are going with off. And when we are going with off, we must have to provide value. Here you can see the off of method is taking some values. Means we have to create we are creating the optional object of some values, not the empty. So let's say Raj. So this optional object that created right now is not empty object. It is having values. So let's print everything one by one. We are printing this optional class object that is of Raj value, not an empty object. Here you can see it is not empty, it is having Raj. If we are going to print hash code and toString, let's see. Okay. Yes, we got the hash code this time. When object was empty, then hash code was 0. This time we got the object. And also with toString method, this Raj is getting printed. Is present in this object. Is anything present? Yes, it is going to give true. It is going to give true. Get. If anything is present in this object, then we are using get method to get that. So we are trying to get the Raj. So right now when we are printing this object, optional Raj is getting printed. Optional is the class, Raj is the value inside that object. Now from that object we are going to extract the Raj value. So Raj is getting extracted. Again this code. Let's run this first. We are printing optional class object which is not empty object in this time when we are creating the optional class object with off method by providing the value. There is value called Raj. So optional.raj, it is not empty this time. Or else remember what or else method is doing. If this method is empty, if this object, optional object is empty, then we are going to provide optional values Rahul. So at that time, when we are printing, Rahul is getting printed. When Rahul is getting printed, when this object is empty, when optional dot empty, there is optional dot empty. When this object is empty, at that time on that object we are providing the Rahul value. But when this object is not empty, this object is having some values which is Raj. So or else method is not working. Why it is not working? Because it is working only when this optional object is empty. When this optional object is empty, then on that empty object we are going to provide certain values. But when this optional object is not empty, then we cannot provide certain values on this object. So same Raj is getting printed. Again we are printing the object of optional class. So here Raj is getting printed. The other method we have is of nullable. Remember at this point, the get method, when the optional object is empty, when we are using empty method to create the optional object, and we are trying to get the value from that empty object, then that is giving no such element exception. No such the data from the empty object of optional object. But right now it is not giving any error because the data is there in the optional object. So it is not giving the error. Let's create the optional object with the third method of nullable. Of nullable. So in this, let's create a string str is equal to null. Let's provide that. We can write null here, or we can write str here. So at this time, let's print it. Let's print one by one. There is no data with the of nullable method of optional class. The object is creating is empty object. Hash code is going to be 0. To string is going to be same optional dot empty. Is present is going to be what? False. Then we are going to try to fetch the data from this empty object. Let's see, it is going to give the error, no such element exception. Yes, no such element exception is coming. No such. So let's hide this. When object is empty, we can provide some values on that object. Means when object is empty, this object is empty object, we can provide the values using or else method. So it is giving some error. Okay, str2 means Rahul is going to get loaded on this object, but that object is itself not going to get altered. Object is going to be stay empty. We are only trying to show the optional values. What if this is not null? This is Raj. We are providing some values. At this time, because object this time is not empty. There is Raj right here, and this Rahul is not going to shown because at this time object is having some values. When object is not going to have any values or there is empty object, then at that place we are you can see here it is Raj. Rahul is not showing because the object is having some values. So we already seen empty method to create the empty object. To create object with some values, we have seen this method of to create the object of optional class with empty object or with some values. We have gone through this method of nullable. So you can understand of nullable is kind of you can write null here or you can provide some values, and based on that, if it is null, object created by of nullable is null, then it is going to object created with a empty method is behaving, and if there is a value, if there is a optional class object which is created with the of nullable object by passing some values, then that optional class object is going to behave like the object created by the of method of optional class. So this is what basically optional class is. Let's go to our notes. We have seen get, is present, or else. These are the same examples. Here you can see we are creating with empty method, we are creating with of method, we are creating with of nullable method. If present, these are the simple things you will work through it by yourself. So this is also example of optional class. Optional class example. What is this? This is the optional class example, and here it is the example of stream API. So I remember that previously we have left some examples that are using stream API. So we are going to cover all those examples also. So we are going to see a stream API which have introduced in Java 8. What is API? It is a collection of interfaces or classes, and inside those interfaces and classes there is going to be methods, and those methods which are inside classes and those classes and interfaces are introduced in Java 8, and all those are going to be called as stream API. So APIs doesn't mean anything. It is a bundle of classes and interfaces that is configured to or provided by the some people to perform a specific task to achieve certain operations. So we are going to walk through stream API feature of Java 8 of JDK 1.8 in next video. So stay tuned.